Welcome to the Gutsy Granny. I'm Deborah, and today I'm super duper excited to be having the opportunity to speak to a friend of mine who I never get enough time to spend time with because she's so busy doing extraordinary things around the island of Bali that is just inspirational, is all I can say. So I'd like to welcome Margaret Barry, my dear friend.
Hi Deborah, thanks for asking me to come over. It's been great to have a quick chat and enjoy some tea and a few biscuits.
All those charity events we used to get to catch up with, now they don't exist.
No, well,
no charity
and we're
events.
having nice herbal tea instead of white wine, so that's good too. Or not.
Bit early for the wine, love. Margaret's been on the island for 30 years, and I'll just give you a quick synopsis. Basically ran a fabulous fashion business here for a long, long time. Commuted or started from the country. Whereabouts in the country? Gleniness or something?
In Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, a place called Yarraman, South East Gippsland. Yeah.
Victoria.
Rural,
country
remote.
girl. Can you believe this? She's 70 years old and she's a country girl. She used to ride horses and everything.
Certainly did.
Unbelievable. Started her world journey working in India and Thailand and other places. And
I was in India from 75, so that was pretty early.
Yeah, in fashion.
In fashion, and I was there from 75 to 90, and in 1990 I came here.
To Bali
to start my own business, which I was able to do, which was great.
And she was just sharing with me what Bali was like then, and we are not going to go on that pivot because it's unbelievable. Her knowledge of Bali 30 years ago, we all need to read that story. We'll have to do another interview just on that one. But what I'm finding with these interviews is so often there's a pivotal time in someone's life where you're going in one trajectory and then something happens. And if you just want to quickly talk about it, don't go into any great detail, but that pivot was a couple of things, wasn't it?
A couple of things. First of all was the Bali bomb, and by that stage I'd been here 12 years.
Yeah.
And like so many of the locals, I got involved and, assisted immediately with the medevac of those who were injured, and then continued to be involved afterwards. And within a couple of weeks, I was sort of reflecting on what we'd achieved and thinking, that could be used towards something else, and that was the synergy of the expats, the tourists who came in on the days and helped us, deal with the injured people, and also the Balinese. So that sort of group of three had been super powerful in managing an appalling situation. So I thought, okay, this has got power for something else. And very soon afterwards, I realised that I saw that being education for Bali's disadvantaged communities who were generally very remote, agrarian, and outside any sort of formal income structure, healthcare, whatever. So I started with that, and we got that going. And
was that called the?
That was called Bali Children Foundation from the word go, or from very early. We'd given it a name, and then about a year later, I had an accident, a life-threatening situation, which involved me being hospitalised and out of order for quite a long time. Quite a heavy period of recovery, really significant rehabilitation. So during that period, I couldn't do my fashion business normally, and basically my staff did it because I wasn't in a position to. But when I'd have a good day,
So it was quite an empire you had, from what I gather.
Well, we had a lot of stores.
Caftans.
Caftans. We had lots of shops, and we were exporting to America and to Australia at that point.
So you've got a very strong business background as well.
Well, I had, because from India, the India days, we started with a very small business, but by the end of it, it was turning over 10 million, and I was a senior executive. So I was used to zeros and knew how to do zeros. And that's been really important as a thread to what we've been able to do with Bali Children Foundation, is that not being scared of volume has been really relevant. So
and the board meetings and CEOs and, powerful people.
Exactly. Being used to working in that framework, being used to report to people at a level that they can see, they can accept that you are making change. Because if you can't accept how successful you are at a certain thing, it's very hard to communicate to anyone else and get them to believe you are. If you're sort of trying to be, we're really trying to do this, but we're not sure what we're going to do, you won't get anywhere. But if you have a clear vision of what you want to achieve, you've already been measuring what you've done and you've managed the measurements. So if you don't measure, you can't manage. Then you can make change. And I've always used those. So it doesn't matter whether you're building a fashion business, a new brand, or whatever, or a charity.
That's
all
really
those
interesting.
principles apply.
Because we sort of bag this whole feminine masculine thing, and we go, oh no, she's such a masculine man, or like she's in a masculine, or she's too aggressive, she's too that. But yet what you've just explained is, yes, you're working in a feminine, charitable, nurturing, on this side it's that, but then you've got the strong masculine to get it done, to know how to put it all together, to encourage people to make it work, which is that masculine aspect of the feminine.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd consider it to be actually a sex-based paradigm. The biggest problem for females is that so few have had the opportunities to do these sorts of things, and had the opportunities from early days. I mean, I was lucky. By 25, I was already out there in a commercial field and competing hard. So not very many women get that chance, and most women at 25 in my generation were having families and having children. I didn't do any of that, largely because I travelled so much. It was really hard to catch a bloke or him to catch me. So, and I'm really glad that I didn't marry and have children, because it's given me a totally different life.
Well, you have a lot of children.
Yes.
How many children have you actually got?
10,000.
Oh my goodness me. Well, that's the mother of all. That's the Mother Theresa.
Yeah, but that's a totally different relationship. So I'm glad that I didn't marry and have children. I'm glad that I got into commerce early, but I don't see it as a masculine feminine paradigm. I really believe the main reason that people associate business with men is because men who got the opportunity and were able to do it. And as we're starting to get women as some significant CEOs. We're starting to get some really cool women out there. Unfortunately, most of them tend to be, within 20 years of my age group. There's
like
not
50
much
upwards.
under 50. There's quite a bit over. And the real thing now is for those in the 30, 40 something age group to see how many of them can step up, either to be in big corporations or to do their own businesses, because I know there's a lot out there trying. But I don't think this sort of paradigm of being a masculine, feminine person, I don't think that's going to exist in the future.
Be nice if it doesn't.
I don't believe it will.
Labels aren't very good.
No.
So tell us, so then you went...
So I had a life-threatening situation. It took me a fair while to rebuild the business, and I didn't want to at the beginning. All I wanted to do was just survive and do a bit of work on the foundation. And then over time, I got back into the situation where I could do the business again and went back into fashion, this time working with Italy, which was enormous fun. It was fantastic.
Oh, was it?
Oh yeah, it was so creative and so
you've
outrageous.
got the Bali Children's Foundation growing at a rate of knots.
Yeah.
You're back on in your legs, back on track, and you're growing your business as well.
Yeah.
So did you ever have any time off?
Well, no, not really, but it wasn't necessary because I was having so much fun, it didn't matter.
Yes.
So, but one thing that I did come out of the trauma experience with, and it was a very traumatic time, is that I came back with the two things. One, I was definitely going to get back into fashion, and but it was never going to be down market. It was going to be as up market as I could get it, because I recognised now how precious time was, and I needed it to be premium. And thank God I was able to have that experience. And the second thing was that I was going to do something very different to what I'd done before, because I'd sort of felt I'd been given the gift of another opportunity of life, and I didn't want my new life to be the same as my old life, because that would be a waste of a chance.
So how old were you there at that stage? Were you already in your 60s?
I was just on 50. Yeah,
so
51.
At 50 was that pivotal point where so you had that, let's say, the break, metaphorically as well, and you made that decision. You were going to change your life or augment your life in a way that it was going to be focused.
It was going to be different. I mean, because it was really weird. When I recovered, I'd had to use so many elements of personal strength and so many different kinds of assistance around me to get to the recovery point, I came out at the other end as a different person. I was not the same as the one who went in. So it wasn't that I made a conscious decision I was going to change. It was actually just I had changed by the recovery, through the recovery process.
Do you think that maybe was because you had to ask for help? Because I can imagine you would have been a fiercely independent woman.
I don't know if it was because I had to ask for help, but it was definitely because of the calibre of the help I got.
Wow, okay.
That was definitely what it was about. And I mean, even to the extent that, you know, I was well connected before it happened. And I was in Perth in hospital at the beginning, and a woman who was in the ministry of the government was too busy. She was away. She couldn't come and visit me. So she sent her girlfriend, who was a judge. And so the girlfriend came and she used to feed me every day because I couldn't feed myself.
Oh.
And so...
A judge?
A judge. In that conversation, it might be in the morning, it might be in the evening, whatever, I got to know her very well. Really brilliant woman. And so we got to know each other, and then later on I went to Melbourne and eventually got back to Bali. But when I got back into Bali Children Foundation and really started pushing it again, I started doing sponsorship for the kids in the villages. And I asked this person if she'd help me get some sponsors. So she had the whole legal fraternity organised,
wow,
getting sponsorship. So it was the calibre of the people I met, their genuineness, their belief in me. And so all those early days of Bali Children Foundation were either built from the people I met during the bomb, families of victims, families of people who died, families of people who'd recovered, and the people I met while I was unwell. So that gave me this sort of almost like a B-grade celebrity kind of
I'd say A grade, because I remember everyone said, "You've got to meet Margaret," and I'm like,
well, whatever.
You and Christina Iskander.
Okay, well,
you
whatever.
You were the it girls.
Okay, oh goodness. Anyway, that was the situation. The quality of the people I met and their extraordinary capacity, that enabled me to do what I did. And then that went on and got back into fashion, had a ball doing Italy, brilliant. And it enabled the company to grow very strongly. And by 2012, we'd got to our first 1,000 children. And at that point, until then,
got to your first 1,000 children. So you're basically educating
1,000 children.
Now, what does that involve? That involves
those days that involved, these were the poorest children, so they were on scholarships, and that involved providing their scholarships, which was school fees, uniforms, books, any other associated costs, and teaching them English.
So you set up your own schools, or...?
No, we worked in the government schools.
Yep.
And up to 2012, we were doing it in the afternoon on a voluntary basis. The kids could come or not come, depending on their interest and capacity.
So you're saying that these 1,000 children that were the original ones didn't go to school at all?
No, they were at school, but the problem was, so they were in primary school, for example. They'd be at primary school.
So they're what, 5 to 10-year-olds?
Yeah, up to 12, 6 to 12. But the problem was that because these villages were remote and the junior high schools and senior high schools were a long way away, and because the families were illiterate, the kids dropped out either at primary school or before primary school was finished. So these are districts where you'd have 60% drop out at primary school. At the end of primary school, they wouldn't go to junior high. It was too expensive to get.
No numeracy and literacy at all.
They didn't have motorbikes those days, or they had one motorbike amongst a big family.
But we're still only talking 10 years ago.
Yeah. So that was the situation.
But isn't there a government rule that the children have to go to school in Indonesia?
Yes, and there was then too. Right. You had to go to school, to junior high school until you were 15, but it didn't mean you did it.
No.
Because if you haven't got if you're very poor and you haven't got a junior high school nearby, what's going to happen? You're not going to go. So we thought, okay, priority number one was to keep the children in school and to get them through to junior high and then senior high. Priority number two was to teach them skills so they could get well-paid jobs. Yeah. So that by the time they'd sacrificed all that time being at school, they had the capacity to get a job. So we called it an education to employment model. And it's still what we call what we do. It's exactly what we do. We've just taken it to a bigger scale. So we started off in the primary schools. after school hours in the afternoon, which was nice. But the trouble was, the better off kids were coming. The poorest kids couldn't afford to get back to school, didn't have the time to walk back to school, were too busy helping mum and dad on the land, trying to do whatever poor subsistence farming they were doing. And so the ones who really needed it weren't getting it. So that didn't work very well. And so as I was saying, to 2012, up to 1,000 children. By that stage, it was completely pro bono through my company.
You were supporting the whole thing?
Yeah. But then, except for the sponsorships, which were coming in to help the individual children, but the whole structure, the staff...
That's a very generous commitment.
Well, I had a lot of staff, and I had administrators, and I had all of that. So it was a question of adding some additional duties, and the team believed in what we were doing, so I'd never had any resistance to that. I had a large amount of space, and on we went. So that... We've spent a lot of time talking about the formative years, but it was this structure that actually enabled us to go crazy and become very big as time went on. I already had a good board, I had great supporters.
What sort of people were on the board?
Australian businessmen.
Right.
Not because I don't like working with women, but because...
They were the movers and shakers.
They had the money, they had the asset, and they had...
Yeah.
They were also very good mentors, a number of them very important.
Yeah.
So from then on, we just kept going. We then went into English within the school system, so we're totally within the school system now, introduced STEM, the science, technology, engineering and math into the system, and now we're working on literacy. And that is our huge campaign for 2021. When the kids go back to school, grades 1s and 2 will have never been to school, grade 3s will have been to school for a moment. That's the challenge now, and that's what we're working to.
Now, you said something absolutely beautiful when we were having a cup of tea earlier, and that was that you felt incredibly gifted that at your age you had this stimuli.
I think I was saying that I felt incredibly privileged to have had the background of business and charity work that had given me all these experiences. And when COVID hit, and we were hit with such huge challenges, particularly feeding people in the villages, keeping their spirits up, etc. I was incredibly grateful to have had the background I had so that I could go out and respond really strongly and make impact. And if I hadn't have had that background, I wouldn't have been able to do what we've done over the last 18 months or 16 months and be able to vision how we're going to go through this and how we're going to make sure that this literacy program, which we're on now, the literacy program we're on now is really important because we've spent 18 years educating these communities, growing numbers of communities. This moment in time could destroy all that work.
Oh, no.
So by getting in there and doing the literacy work and making sure those 3 vulnerable grades across the board get the chance to do these special programs.
And we're talking literacy in Indonesian, not in English.
In Indonesian, absolutely.
Yeah, of course. So they can just read and write their own language, yeah?
Well, not in the mother language, because most of the kids are either speaking Balinese or when they get to school, or they're speaking Sasak if they're in Lombok, because we're quite big in Lombok as well. So we actually have to the kids have to learn Indonesian, number one, and then learn to read, write and do numeracy. So it's a huge challenge. We've figured out a way that we think it'll work. And so that's what we're going for the next 12 months, is really trying to flip this. So instead of having 3 years of semi-illiterate to illiterate kids, to having 3 years of kids who can read and write and do numeracy, and off they go. They can be educated.
So how many kids do you now have in the program?
There's 10,000 at the moment.
Oh, sorry, you said that, 10,000 kids.
But
and how many have gone
as we
through?
move into this literacy thing, it'll probably go up to about 13,500.
Wow. And how many, what's your, you've got some kids that have gone all the way through to university now?
Yeah, we've got a lot, all sorts. We've got engineers, doctors, civil engineers with master's degrees, I think 6 nurses.
You must cry at their graduations. You must cry. It would be very moving.
I think Amberini, our doctor who graduated very recently, was one of the most emotional moments for everybody, because it had been She was brought up by her grandparents, battle all the way through. And for her to have she'd been with the foundation since she was pretty little. For her to have achieved that was incredible.
Oh.
But so many of them are brought up by their grandparents, you know. So many don't have parents or are missing a parent, or parents gone off and married someone else and, you know, the other parent's dead. So that's a very common factor.
And I also said to you that, you know, this is a personal thing for me. I always get a little overwhelmed with the whole charity thing. As I said, I was in the tsunami and I've seen the dark side of generosity. And that was fairly traumatic. And how do people like me support you in the easiest sort of way, apart from just writing out a check and giving you money? What's the best way we can support you?
The best ongoing way is to sponsor a child.
Like World Vision used to do?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Because I used to love doing that.
Goes directly to the child.
Okay.
And you have the opportunity to have a relationship with that child.
Oh,
but that doesn't mean take
that.
them out shopping or any of that. Not like that. But have a relation. No.
Oh.
Deborah.
Oh. Education too.
Well, you can have a connection with the child as long as they're fully, as long as the BCF member is there and their family agree, their parents agree. You know, this we're not adopting children; we're helping them with their education. So that's the best way that has a long-term relationship involved. Or the other way is, like at the moment, get involved in one of our literacy campaigns, help support a library, and be part of paint the library. You know, be part of get some books for our libraries.
This is up north.
North Bali, Songan in the Mount Batur crater, Lembongan, Lombok, and the Gillies. We'll be doing libraries all through. We've got 8 that we're on the run with at the moment, but we'll probably end up with about 27 libraries.
I feel overwhelmed and I feel inspired.
Good, as long as you're inspired.
Exactly.
Inspiration keeps us all going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very inspirational. And thank you so much for your time today. And you're a beautiful woman.
Thank you for asking me.
Oh, I'm just
really
so
cool.
blessed to have these incredible people to live with in Bali that are doing so much amazing work. So thank you for joining us at the Gutsy Granny, and we'll see you next time round. Have a great day.